Welcome to Creature Guide Live Daily News. Today we're going over a new species of a belly sore carnivorous theropod that has been discovered, as well as what's going on with a species of plesiosaur, and taking a look at the origin of a certain character from Ice Age, at least when it comes to the fossil record, and what's going on with polar bears over in Ice Age Europe. And we're streaming on both Rumble, YouTube, and Kick. Also, put in any questions or comments into the chat about any prehistoric or current animals. Can even be funny comments in general. Okay, let's dive back into the Mesozoic era. So, from Sci News, new species of carnivorous dinosaur unearthed in Argentina. Of course, I mean, it's just not too surprising to find some species of theropod dinosaur from this region, but it's always good to see new species pop up. A new genus and species of Phrylosaurian stiff-backed lizard, a belly-saured dinosaur being named Lulcaucan aleocranianus, has been discovered by a team of paleontologists from Argentina. He definitely has a very stereotypical sort of and a belly sword look, at least for a species that does not consist of any types of horn-like structures, like what you see in animals such as Carnotaurus, or the single horns, at least towards the middle part of the skull, like with what you see in animals like Majungasaurus. Certain other species, like Tarascosaurus, probably have a bit more of a similar sort of a skull structure as this individual. He does seem to have very backward curving teeth in general, but this isn't necessarily surprising for different species of a bellysaurs. But it is more so compared to other theropod lineages.
It looks like he's wearing a sun visor over his eyes.
Yeah, it is. In fact, I am wondering if that would have provided somewhat amount of shade. So I wonder how far back this was. So Leucalcan aleocranianus roamed our planet during the late Cretaceous epoch about 80 million years ago. So this is during the early Campanian stage of the Cretaceous over in Argentina. There is quite a bit going on within the ecosystem at this point. It is not necessarily the same as it was 20 million years prior, with much larger species of sauropods and certain other carnivorous dinosaurs roaming the region. But there are still signs of um, their later relatives occurring in the region. So the dinosaur was a member of Abelisauridae, a family of big predators known from the ancient supercontinent of Gondwana. So that would be consisting of not just South America, but even Africa, Australia, and Antarctica. It grew to be about 5 meters or 16.4 feet in length and had extremely powerful bite, very sharp teeth, huge claws, and keen sense of smell. Huge claws maybe for its feet if we found any. But their arms in general when it came to belly sores. Like, let's look up another species, the cryptops. They had some of the smallest arms compared to their body size of any lineage of dinosaur. Maybe only the mononychids or certain Tyrannosaur species rivaling them when it comes to how small their forearms were compared to their body size. I also believe when looking at larger species of tyrannosaurs or even the mononychids, they had longer claws compared to larger bellysaurs. Okay, so Krytops,
Okay, what is this?
cryptops. It's another belly sword. So
Okay, goofy one.
yeah, I mean, the thing is, when it comes to the throat sac, which has been shown in a wide variety of different reconstructions of different lineages of theropod dinosaurs in general, that would include different species of the herbivorous therizinosaurs or the plant-eating long-necked theropods. Well, you do have animals like Dinohyrus, but that animal was more of like an omnivorous creature, being piscivorous or feeding on fish, which we have evidence of, and also feeding on aquatic plants.
Is that any better?
That is kind of freaky. Those are huge flies, unless this is supposed to be a youngster. But the problem is, um, Belly sores in general didn't have arms that splayed out in that type of a way. They were quite small and very much hugging the body. And they also didn't have a head structure like that. It resembled like an earlier lineage of ceratosaurians, which is what the Abelisaurs derived from.
This is titled Sarcosuchus Ruins a ugh, Cryptops Afternoon.
It's possible that you could have had something like a crocodilomorph like Sarcosuchus go after a full grown Cryptops, considering it's not either a large species of a Belisaurid, more or less like a theropod in general. This animal was maybe pushing 14 to 22 feet in length, or somewhere around 4.2 meters to maybe somewhere around 6.8 meters, and probably didn't weigh much more than a ton at most, or pushing about 2,000 pounds or a little over 900 kilograms. Sarcosuchus, however, is probably focusing on different species of fish, and it might go after younger dinosaur individuals if you're referring to different species of sauropods.
What's on the side of this guy's face?
It's just when you look at Sarcosuchus, it has a thin jaw structure. They're adding like the frill of either those are fish fins, or it's supposed to be like the frill of the Dilophosaurus in Jurassic Park.
On the side of his mouth.
Yeah, they just added it to the bottom jaw. I mean, it's an interesting feature, but we don't have any evidence for this occurring, at least with any species of dinosaur in general. You also had the frilled dragon lizards over in Australia.
So they just came up with that for Jurassic Park.
I think it was a mixture of like the frilled dragon and yeah, just like Michael Crichton's and I think the other author or two's imagination. Oh yeah, this is a really good depiction of a cryptops. So this is supposed to take place around 112 million years ago during the early Cretaceous, um, just before the Cenomanian stage, over in Niger or northern Africa. And this was back when the Sahara Desert was covered in lush floodplains, different conifer forests, and a wide variety of different species of long necked sauropods, different species of spinosaurs would have existed in this region, and different species of belisauриds, also including the different lineages of crocodilomorphs like the Sarcosuchus, being one of the largest crocodilomorphs to exist. And at this point, it might very well be the largest species to have evolved. Later on into the Cretaceous, you would have larger species like Deinosuchus evolve over in North America. And then you would have Persaurus evolve over in South America by the Pliocene epoch, but it was not necessarily the largest species of crocodile, but it probably came second or third. It's a huge debate when it comes to those um, carnivores. But this Cryptops, what is interesting, this isn't necessarily a new reconstruction, but came out like back in 2010s. But the artist gave feathers to the Belisauur in this instance. Now, it may be representing like a chick or a young Cryptops going over to a waterfall to hydrate, and it possibly just still has feathers. But it could be representing maybe an adult and just reconstructing them with feathers, which is quite interesting. It certainly is possible that the ceratosaurians, like Cryptops, were feathered. We just don't have any preserved pigmo fibers from any preserved skin specimens. Okay, well, let's head back to the article. So it also had a strange short skull with rough bones. So in life, its head had bulges and prominences like some living reptiles. But the most distinctive feature of Leucalcin aleocranianus is a small posterior air-filled sinus in the middle ear zone that has not been seen in any other abelisaurid found so far. Well, this is quite interesting, said Dr. Ariel Mendez, a paleontologist at the Patagonian Institute of Geology and Paleontology. It means that this dinosaur likely heard differently to other belisauриds, most probably better and similar to that of modern day crocodile. Hmm. So certain lower frequency sounds, and as well like even mid frequency to an extent like us. This finding implies a different hearing adaptation from other belisauриds and likely a keener sense of hearing. So it possibly heard in much lower frequencies compared to maybe animals like Pachynemosaurus, Carnotaurus, Abelisaurus, maybe even Cryptops. This is an extraordinary amount of the skull that has been preserved. This is very good to see with this new species. Wow, especially with the upper jaw, like the upper maxilla. That is fantastic with what we're seeing in those pieces with the different aged teeth coming in. It's unfortunate that we only found like a sliver of the back part of the bottom jaw or the mandibular part of the skull. But then looking at the rear end of the skull in general, that's really good to see. Okay. Yeah. Very slight, maybe sort of a horn like structure towards the back, but that's about it. That's fine. Still good looking at belly sword. So the fossilized cranial remains of Leucalcan aleocranianus were recovered from the Bajo de la Carpa Formation at Invernada fossil area in northwestern Patagonia, Argentina. According to the team, the ancient predator lived in the same small area and period of time as Vievinator exoni, another species of Variosaurian abelisaurid from the Bajo de la Carpa Formation. Yeah, the Bajo de la Carpa Formation, we do find a variety of different late Cretaceous fauna from this region, like different species of Lithostrodian sauropods, different species of like the abelisaurs in general, and I believe even certain rare iguanodontids. Okay, let's however bring up the Kelmyosaurus. So Kelmayis.
This looks like it's from a video game.
Yeah, it's a bit of a mystery when it comes to this species of dinosaur. I mean, this animal has been somewhat theorized to be a part of the Metracanthosaur lineage, but it does seem to possibly align with the Carcharodontosaurs in general. But this animal is from China over 110 million years ago. So possibly around the same time or earlier than the Cryptops bellisaurid we were talking about just beforehand. But far before this new species of Abelisaur they found in late Cretaceous Argentina, considering this animal was inhabiting the early Cretaceous of China. It is possible that this creature could reach somewhere around 30 to 36 feet in length, or pushing somewhere between 9 to 11 meters, and probably weighing at least 4 to 5 tons. So, this animal was quite robust for different species of carcharodontosaurs in general for the early Cretaceous, and possibly dates further back than to carcharodontosaurs existing over in North America at this point, like Acrocanthosaurus, which would have existed over in different parts of North Carolina and Texas. But this animal never touched the North American continent. It's a bit of a mystery to me at the moment what sauropods he could be hunting in this instance, or at least how he's being portrayed. It is a decent scenery.
You're gonna like this AI version.
It's more like a dry season sort of instance. This is somebody else. Kilumapusora. It
Oh.
seems to be an iguanodontid or a hadrosauromorph that popped up.
Oh, that's my fault. Okay.
A brachiosaur in the
I
background.
did.
They seem to be either a titanosaur or some larger, more heavily built species of diplodocids. The titanosaurs at this point, especially Titanosauridae, have probably been around for about 30 to 40 million years. The similar thing with the Carcharodontosaur lineage, as well as the Abelisaurs. The Abelisaurs seem, at least the Belisauridae, seems to have first evolved around 140 million years ago during the first few million years of the Cretaceous. And, you would have it where lineages of sauropods, like the diplodocids, would exist until the first 10 million years of the Cretaceous period, around 89 million years ago, is when they seem to have disappeared. And then when it comes to the brachiosaurs, it's somewhere around the 100 million year mark as well, possibly pushing like 95 million years ago. The carcharodontosaurs would be quite similar, with what on earth? Yikes, Yinosaurus all of a sudden shows up.
Yeah, but it was listed under the
Yeah, it's really annoying when the internet does that. But when it comes to reconstruction of this animal, I mean, this looks really good. I don't know what other family you would place this animal in outside of Carcharodontosauridae or Carcharodontosauridae. Now, I think the specimens that we have found of this specific creature is quite fragmentary. I think a lot of it is also based on certain teeth that we have discovered of this animal. But there might be fragmentary vertebra and parts of the skull too. So, um, yeah, I think that's why it's just extremely questioned whether or not it's a carchodontosaur. But based on all of the or many of the depictions, it seems to be that way. I forgot what it was. Some other species of theropod that could possibly be a like 33-foot or 10-meter long sauropod, but still heavily debated. It might be him. It's saying 1.5 to 2 tons, but it's also only putting him in around 7 to 10 meters or 23 to 33 feet in length. I mean, it very well could be considering carcharodontosaurs also at this point were a bit more lightly built. So, varies. I mean, 4 to 5 ton individual that I was mentioning earlier, it could be just maybe its upper limit. Okay, let's head back to the article. So, this is a particularly important discovery because it suggests that the diversity and abundance of abelisaurids were remarkable, not only across Patagonia, but also in more local areas during the dinosaurs' twilight period, said Dr. Federico Iannicini, a paleontologist at the National University of San Luis. Leucalcan aleocranianus was similar in many respects to Viabinator exoni, except that it was smaller. The holes in the skull through which the veins passed were larger and more widely separated from the supraoccipital crest, among other differences. Yeah, that is a huge distinction, like compared to other species of abelisaurs, like Carnotaurus, for instance. That is, but strange too. So this discovery also suggests that there are likely more abelisaurid out there than we just haven't found yet. So we will be looking for other new species and a better understanding of the relationship among furlosaurs or phrylosaurs. That sounds better. Okay, let's bring up an herbivore, Maxacalosaurus. So Maxakil.
okay, just for fun.
That looks like a full blown. I'm guessing it's a saltwater crocodile. At least by like the widened snout area, it could be a mugger crocodile, but it seems to be a little too robust for a Nile. But there's some large Nile crocodiles. But besides that, this specific lineage of crocodilomorph had not evolved yet, so it wouldn't be here. So the Maxicalosaurus also. Whoa, hold on a second. Okay. It's possible that this animal did have small bits of armor, especially along its core or even like the upper shoulder blades, bottom of the neck, around the pelvis region, but it has canines, like a Gorgonopsian from the Permian period. That should not be occurring. And even its teeth are far too um yeah, they're too thin. I mean, you could say that, many sauropods in general had, in some cases, they're referred to as, well, many cases, like leaf shaped teeth, somewhat long, but these seem too almost knife like. You do have to have very sharp teeth to take out vegetation, but it's not going to look like a carnivore.
Okay, these guys look like dogs.
Definitely not any canines. If Ceratosaurus may have had possibly canines, but even when it comes to that creature, there isn't really a species of dinosaur that is considered to have canines. Okay, this is better. So, Maxicalosaurus is a species of smaller sauropod dinosaur from the late Cretaceous Maastrichtian stage of Brazil, around 68 to 70 million years ago. So, it's very likely that this animal came or coexisted with Carnotaurus. So, it's very possible you would have possibly had pairs or packs of Carnotaurus hunt Maxicalosaurus occasionally. It wasn't a very large sauropod, maybe reaching around 40 feet in length or pushing 12 meters, and probably weighed possibly a little over 5 tons. But I think we might have found preserved skin of this animal showing that it was armored like the different Lithostrodian species that inhabited South America, especially the Saltosaurs. But this doesn't seem to be a member of Saltosauridae specifically. It's just a Lithostrodian. Oh, that's interesting. Oh, Picunimosaurus. Okay, maybe earlier in its reign, it's this would have been one of the other main predators to have hunted this sauropod. Definitely that Picunimosaurus in the water has a big problem. Considering the animal was not. I mean, I think Picunimosaurus reached somewhere around 2 to 3 tons. It was one of the largest species of Abelisaurus to exist over in Brazil and Argentina. So slightly dwarfing the Carnotaurus, definitely by length. The animal or the carnivore could reach somewhere around 30 to possibly 35 feet in length or somewhere around 9 to almost 11 meters. And I would say that its skull structure is slightly more similar to the new species of Belisaur has been discovered from slightly earlier into the Cretaceous. This is possible with a confrontation, like with a mother Mexicalosaurus in this case, and a Picunimosaurus, but very likely it's not going to come this close to a full-grown individual, considering she could easily smush it.
Okay, is this any better?
No, possibly. Still weighs about at least 2 tons. No, not really. This animal is going to have a very distinct skull structure from brachiosaurs, which is what these animals somewhat look like. They're very far off for a brachiosaur, far too short of a neck structure, even for the smaller species.
Okay, why does this
And
guy have waddles?
osteoderms are immense. Huh. That's actually not a bad look. I mean, I don't mind it. It's certainly possible. The osteoderms they just placed further down the tail. I think there are members of like those Strodiae that are reconstructed with osteoderms or basically armor that we haven't necessarily discovered, but because of how closely related they are to the armored Lithostrodians that we have evidence of osteoderms from, they just simply put it onto like their core and their sometimes around their tail, which is fine. I mean, it does look good. It definitely would have helped prevent it from getting injured in certain instances from like different belly swords. The carcharodontosaurs at this point have gone extinct, so they're of course of no concern. Megaraptorids, however, are within the region, and they're in some cases worse than the Abelisaurs. Probably in many cases, when it came to the larger Megaraptorid species, the sauropods were more concerned about them, especially the smaller species of sauropods. There was probably not a lot they could do unless they could get a direct hit with their tail or possibly just smush the Megaraptorids by rearing up on their hind legs and just taking them down like a pancake. So, okay, let's head to another part of the Mesozoic era. And feel free to put any questions or comments into the chat about these sauropods and theropod dinosaurs, as well as other prehistoric life in general. And hit that subscribe button. Do it. Okay. Or consider this a divorce. Um, okay. So from Sci News, new elasmosaurid plesiosaur unearthed in Chile. So a new genus and species of Aristodecatine elasmosaurid plesiosaur has been described from a partial skeleton found in central Chile. Oh, this is really good to see. That is not a very flattering depiction, but I've seen worse. I've got to be honest, it's kind of hideous.
Where's its eyes?
Yeah, yeah, I think I see his iris or his pupil.
Is that his eye or is that a hole in his face?
Yeah, I can't tell. I think those are sharks in the background. Maybe it's a smaller species. The newly discovered plesiosaur lived approximately 67 million years ago during the Maastrichtian stage of the Cretaceous period. Wow. Okay, I was expecting much earlier. This is a bit shocking, even for um, this elasmosaur. So, dubbed One-Yelphia molensis, the animal belongs to Aristodectinae, a group of plesiosaurs in the family Elasmosauridae. It is only the second representative of this group known to date in the southeastern Pacific during the late Maastrichtian stage. Huh. Actually, yeah, I guess that's not too surprising. Hmm. Very oddly, it's a very odd morphology when it comes to this creature. It's not typical, even for an elasmosaurid. It's weird. Okay, let's bring up another species of plesiosaur. Um, okay, the Calawayasaurus. So Calawayasaur. Okay, yeah. I think he might have certain issues here. But I mean, it's really not terrible. I'd say though when it comes to the tail fluke of this animal, it might be a bit off. It really should be covering both sides or both the upper part and bottom part of the tail end. But besides that, I guess when it comes to the tooth structure in this instance, it might be a bit exaggerated. Also, this animal might have had a slightly longer neck compared to its body size. So, this animal was inhabiting the oceans a little over 120 million years ago during the early Cretaceous period. And oh yeah, this definitely looks better. And I believe it was possibly a distant relative of the elasmosaurid plesiosaurs themselves. So this creature was reaching somewhere around a little over 30 feet in length. They're pushing 9 meters and likely fed on different species of ammonites, going after different smaller species of fish. Probably not going after any other marine reptiles in the ocean, like not even preying on.
I found a crayon version.
Oh, that's actually not bad. Yeah, it looks good. It's like it's a very typical sort of a dental morphology when it comes to just their the teeth of this individual. Well, I mean the Calawayasaurus, other plesiosaurs in general. Yeah, that was quite strange with the non-artist depiction. So, yeah, several species of ammonites, probably one of their main sources of food. We also have found in a wide variety of different species of plesiosaurs evidence of these animals swallowing small stones or gastrolids to likely help grind food, especially when it came to the ammonites inside their stomachs. There was a theory at one point that the small stones could possibly help um, like weigh them down in the ocean, but it would be such a small amount of weight when it comes to, swallowing these stones that it likely didn't really have that much of an impact. Wow. That is a very, I guess, um, just aerodynamic sort of a look, but it also seems like kind of fat at the exact same time. But yeah, it's a good depiction. These marine reptiles, it's very likely that they didn't, in some cases, have lips like what you would see in different terrestrial animals like the archosaurs, like the different species or lineages of dinosaurs. However, it does seem certain creatures like the ichthyosaurs, which at this point are still existing within the Cretaceous period. So you would have had different smaller species, probably not reaching much more than 15 to 20 feet in length, or some around 4 meters to somewhere around 6 meters, roaming in different parts of the ocean. And the plesiosaurs, on average, especially at this point, were not really a threat at all. There were different species of long-skulled pliosaurs that were existing in the ocean at this point. That's a really good reconstruction or a really good, I guess, skull representation for the Calawayasaurus. Okay, I guess we can go back to the article. Okay, so what else is going on here? So, let's see. Okay, so the Aristodectini was a monophyletic lineage of elasmosaurid plesiosaurs, morphologically and ecologically distinct from other typically long-necked elasmosaurids, said University of Chile paleontologist Dr. Rodrigo Otero and Sergio Soto Acuna. So the first were characterized by the acquisition of enlarged skulls, an increased tooth number, as well as shortened and thick necks, which spanned mostly along the Weddellian province during the late Cretaceous. Yeah, that is interesting when all of a sudden that reoccurred because this isn't the first time that this has occurred with different species of plesiosaurs. You had it where there were plesiosaurs back in the late Jurassic as well as the mid and early Jurassic. So between 144 to 200 million years ago that had shorter necks compared to their body size. However, I think they might have had somewhat slightly larger skulls just compared to their overall length. But, in most cases, it didn't really make them any more apex of a predator than compared to, these specific species in the Cretaceous. But there were certain species back in the mid to early Jurassic that were likely capable of going after different species of ichthyosaurs. Doesn't seem to be the case back in the or later into the Cretaceous. So the first were characterized I already said that. They are frequent in the Maastrichtian of the southern hemisphere. So this is somewhere between like 72 to 73 or from 72 to 73 million years ago to 66 million years ago. With occurrences in Argentinian Patagonia, central and southern Chile, New Zealand, and Antarctica. The growing body of evidence currently shows that among Australolasmosaurid plesiosaurs, at least one monophyletic lineage, the Aristodectini, reached a provincial diversity with endemic forms in Antarctica, New Zealand, and southern South America during the late Cretaceous. We do have evidence for plesiosaurs from marine deposits over in Antarctica roaming the cooler waters in those regions. And also at certain times when Antarctica was going through a bit of a cooler period. And so it would be probably similar with New Zealand and South America. Okay. Let's bring up another species of maybe this time the pliosaurs, Luscan. So Luskhan. This is actually around a similar time to the Kalawayasaur.
He has a funny face.
Yeah, it's him. So he has been discovered in the marine deposits of Western Russia. And this animal is a member of the Pliosauridae lineage of marine reptiles. And this was somewhere around 127 million years ago during the early Cretaceous. So around the first 18 million years of the period. Now, with this type of a snout, it was still capable of going after like probably younger elasmosaurid or just plesiosaur individuals in general, possibly even younger pliosaurs, but it's not going after larger marine reptile species or like individuals of, per se, the Calawayasaurus. It's probably also just sticking to different larger species of fish or medium sized species, different species of ammonites, and probably even going after seabirds in some instances, but that's pretty much it. It is quite distinct when it comes to most species of pliosaurs, considering there's a wide variety of different species of large skulled pliosaurs that we have discovered that tend to have more broad sort of skull structures. This animal seems to have like reversed back in time. I'm not going to say de-evolved. It just decided to evolve a much more elongated or a longer, narrow skull.
I found a penguin version.
Okay, this is like Dolly Corincops plesiosaur. I'm not going to stick this with Luscon. That is too far. And I like the Dolly Corincops. They're a great lineage of plesiosaurs, but he Luscon is still he's powerful compared to those individuals, but they were very agile within the water. What I mean by that is quite maneuverable. At least that's how they tend to be portrayed. But, Luzcon was a medium-sized species. In some cases, you could say maybe even a bit smaller, but, it was larger, slightly larger than, like, the Liopleurodon of the mid-Jurassic. So Liopleurodon was existing off the coast of England around 165 million years ago. The animal was pushing somewhere around 28 feet in length, or probably reaching, 8.6 meters, and also weighing maybe 2 to 3 tons, which you could say is close to Luscon. Luscon was probably slightly heavier, but they had similar jaw structures. Like Liopleurodon was one of the later lineages of the Jurassic when it came to pliosaurs that had longer, more just narrow overall morphological skull structures.
Was this done with a marker?
Could have been. These aren't bad. They definitely gave a lot more of like a core and larger, like pliosaurid sort of a morphology just to the belly and the upper vertebrae region. Yeah, the tail fluke looks good in the back, and the fins look fine. And the overall skull, I mean, I think it looks pretty good. Oh, that's another thing that's odd with Luscon. If you notice at the upper part of the skull, or at the very front, the skull or the upper part of the front part, the upper maxilla of the jaw is curved upwards. And like specifically, I think it's just 2 teeth in that region. Maybe there's another. Yep, that's it. And that is very unique within the pliosaur lineage. Now, it's not necessarily um unique. Well, I mean, it
It likes
still
to
is.
poke its food.
Yeah, and not in a friendly way. But, I'd also say that the teeth are probably a bit more robust compared to Liopleurodon's skull. Not that Liopleurodon wasn't capable of shredding its meals to death, but, this one much more so.
Bill Flunkendorf said, "Such an incredible marine reptile."
Um, First of all, welcome aboard, Archosaur, and yeah, I mean, he is definitely a great, I'd say he's almost like a Liopleurodon that decided to take, um, different evolutionary steps. And what I mean by that is specifically when it comes to his overall tooth structure, and he does have an almost like ichthyosaur sort of a look to him, at least when it comes to the eye socket somewhat. But what I was trying to say about the front of the upper jaw is that this isn't the only animal or carnivore to evolve this. If you look at a certain more renowned species of dinosaur from the early Cretaceous of England, specific not England, Utah, and specifically Utah raptor, it also has a wait a second. I might be confusing that with its bottom jaw. So for some reason, yeah, that dinosaur, it's not necessarily the only one decided to have a bit of a lowered bottom jaw, but I was mixing it up with this. So basically, you had different types of carnivores, um, like certain marine reptiles, and as well as dinosaurs that decided to, for some reason, have a bit of a tilt in the very front of their jaws, which is odd. Why? What really is a benefit for this? Now, I mean, like you said, viciously poking its prey, which would probably benefit it in certain
I
instances.
didn't say vicious. You did.
Oh,
I just said poking.
yeah, or like even during the breeding season, and possibly these could be used for jousting into other males. So,
I didn't even
or
think about that.
you could have had it where, depending on the species, if you had it where maybe the females were larger, and then the male would have a bit of another type of a problem. Okay, well, a fascinating species of pliosaur from Western Russia. So it's about 127 million years ago in the early Cretaceous. Yeah, it is interesting. There are certain depictions that show him as very like,
Penguin?
yeah, penguin, almost like he could be like a bit of a pet. But then you look at his teeth, and well, not so much. I do wonder how much more robust like Luscon's skull is compared to the sperm whale, because the sperm whale, it has quite a weak jaw structure, and it's really only going after squid. Okay. So let's see. So the near adult partial postcranial skeleton of wound.
Bless you.
Thanks. Let's see. Wunielfia malensis was recovered from the upper Maastrichtian levels of the Quariquina Formation in central Chile. Study's skeleton was recovered from strata exposed in the locality of Mariscadero, south of Pelujue. 320 kilometers or 199 miles southwest of from Santiago, researchers explain. The specimen was found 20 centimeters or 7.9 inches above a second partial postcranial skeleton of an intermediate elasmosaurid. Its small, almost adult size differs from coeval larger forms previously described in South America, particularly Aristonectes parvidens and Aristonectes quariquinensis, with estimated lengths over 10 meters or 33 feet. These are not small elasmosaurids, not the largest, but I'd say 33 feet is like a larger, medium sized species of elasmosaurid. So Rastonictes seem to have exploited a unique trophic niche unrecorded among other plesiosaurs. The presence of Arrestonectes and Wuyenfelia during the late Maastrichtian of central Chile may correlate with a highly productive ecosystem able to support a taxonomic diversity with this distinctive ecomorphotype. So yeah, I mean, this is really good to see. Further studies on this new taxon and other early Arrestonectines will be key to understanding the origin and evolution of this singular clade of elasmosaurids. Okay, let's dive forward in time to the Cenozoic era, and do feel free to stick in any questions or comments about any prehistoric or current animals. So let's head to the Ice Age. So the travel.com discovery of fossils in Scotland may prove that polar bears lived there during the Ice Age. Well, we definitely have evidence of certain parts of Central Europe for the polar bears occurring within the region. So I would assume so for Scotland. And yes, this is specifically Ursus maritimus, which is the same species of bear that exists today, or the polar bear. So, could polar bears have existed in Scotland during the Ice Age? Researchers and assistants believe they quite possibly did after discovering fossils collected along the limestone cliffs of Assynt at the bone caves at Inchna. That's Celtic? Okay. Experts from the National Museum of Scotland and the universities of Aberdeen and Edinburgh have reevaluated the fossils found in 2009 and have indicated that three samples were taken, with each of the data from the analysis revealing that the fossils belonged to bears between 30,000 and 50,000 years ago, the Ice Age. Well, it's like the late ice age or during the last glacial maximum. So a massive colder part of or one of the colder periods of the ice age occurring at this point, or the Pleistocene epoch, which first started around 2.53 million years ago and ended abruptly 12,000 years ago. So DNA analysis also indicated what type of food the bears consumed. Seafood. Oh, that's specific. You might as well give him like a Papa Seafood sort of a menu. Or I'm trying to think of what else. Anyway, let's see what he was feeding on. I doubt it was fried shrimp, which is in alignment with what polar bear diets consist of. So, a discovery in 2009 reveals in 2024 that polar bears may have traversed the Scottish Highlands during the Ice Age. So, this seems to be an actual photo of one today. Where are you? Svalbard? Polar bear looking out from a rocky shore on Bezel's Brain in the Svalbard Islands. Okay. So it's in the Svalbard archipelago of Norway. Whoa. It seems to be a healthy individual. He's going to do well that summer. He's definitely put on enough weight, but depending on, I'm not exactly sure when this was taking place, but he's definitely not starving. But he's
No, but he
not.
looks like he's like, "Are you bringing me dinner?"
Yeah. Or are you the dinner? Um, yeah, either one. It's like, hey, any eggs? Fruit, seal, whale carcass is great. So previously, the fossils had been identified as either brown bear or polar bear bones, but no significant determination came from that analysis. So let's see. According to the National Museum of Scotland, the remains found in 2009 include the skull, the second lower mandible, fragments of upper mandible, vertebrae, ribs, most of the long bones, the main elements making up the pelvis, and several elements of from the feet. No, it's not a bad amount of the body, especially for an ice age polar bear. So now, with advanced technology in analyzing DNA, such as radiocarbon dating, researchers were able to re-examine the fossils. So Professor Kate Brighton from the University of Aberdeen said we have identified several samples which stick out like a sore thumb, both from the diets of other bears living in Scotland thousands of years ago and from what we'd expect of today's brown bears. Instead of consuming the meat of land based animals, plants, or even a little salmon, like contemporary brown bears, these bears appeared to have lived almost exclusively on seafood. Okay, well, you could technically call the seals in the case for the bear seafood.
I That's what I was thinking.
They will in some, especially in Greenland, southeastern Greenland. It is well renowned, well, somewhat for polar bears in that specific area to really exclusively feed on Arctic char. Like seals don't make up a part of their diet or much of a part. Um, which Arctic char is virtually an Arctic species of salmon. Trying to think of what else. It's likely occasionally they'll go after different types of crustaceans or like shellfish in the area, like maybe certain crabs, but it's not hitting me what specific species, if they come upon them, would be in the region or possibly like even Scotland at this point. I think the last brown bears recently in like Scotland were maybe like back in 1,000 years ago. So, their newest research findings have been published in a scientific journal. There were definitely brown bears inhabiting and cave bears, Eurasian cave lions, woolly mammoths in the British Isles in general during the entire Pleistocene. You would have had certain times, like during the major glacial periods, where they might have been kicked out, like by the um, vastly, not necessarily changing climate, just extreme cold snap. And they would just have to retreat further south. So Scotland's okay. So let's see what else. So the bones at Craig Van or Nam Lum were first discovered back in 1889 by two geologists. During that discovery, they uncovered 2 miles of underground passageways, large cavernous chambers, and the bones thought to be those of a polar bear. In 1927, a skull was discovered in the bone caves at Inchnadampf. DNA samples were taken from the skull, but there was not enough DNA for a conclusion about what type of bear the skull belonged to. Um, Sort of wondering if they were going to give. I mean, I know it's not over yet, but a bit of info about maybe what they were eating. Maybe they made some chemical um, isotope analysis on the teeth. So fast forward to 2024, and evidence has now been revealed differently thanks to advanced technology and the diligence of both scientists and researchers seeking definitive answers to the questions asked many years ago. Could polar bears have existed in Scotland during the Ice Age? They may very well have been. We should know more after further DNA analysis is completed on the bones in Sweden. And that's it. Arr. Well, that wasn't very informative. That's unfortunate. Okay. Well, let's head forward. Actually, technically, we're going to be heading back. Okay. So this is based off of a very well-renowned person, but he's been extinct for a much longer period compared to what many people tend to comprehend. So, from science.org, this is a bit further back in time. From Science Shot, meet the saber-toothed squirrel in quote. So, a small mammal with big teeth scurried about during the age of the dinosaurs.
Why is this so blurry?
Yeah, I don't know. But this is essentially supposed to be Scrat, the squirrel from Ice Age. But he did not exist during the Pleistocene epoch or the Ice Age. What?
I was
That's that's strange.
Nope.
Huh. Odd. And essentially, this animal was a carnivore, was not feeding on acorns, um, or likely even many species of leaves. It was quite a vicious creature. And it somewhat had to be, considering it was living amongst, like, when it came to its family in general, the last species of his kind seemed to have died out around the Miocene epochs, around maybe 20 million years ago. So Scrat, the fictional saber-toothed squirrel from the Ice Age films, may not be so fictional after all. Researchers have discovered the fossil remains of a 94 million-year-old squirrel-like critter with a long, narrow snout and a pair of curved saber fangs that it would have likely used to pierce its insect prey. So yeah, it's a thing. I mean, it might have also gone after small amphibians or reptiles, maybe even preyed on certain younger dinosaur hatchlings. But it was not living amongst the shadows of mammoths or nimravid saber-tooths like Barbarophilis or basically Diego, and did not coexist with the giant ground sloths like Sid or Megalonyx. So the creature, pieced together from skull fragments unearthed in Argentina and dubbed Chronopio dentiacutis, was not ancestral to us or any living mammal. Instead, researchers report online today in Nature it belonged to an extinct group called Dryolastoides, a cadre of fuzzy mammals that scurried about in the shadow of long necked dinosaurs, as in the artist's impression above. I mean, 94 million years ago was around the time or towards basically the end of the reign of different species of immense South American dinosaurs like the carcharodontosaurs, certain species of large titanosaur sauropods, and I think it's around the time that also like the Megaraptor had started making more of a presence within the continent. But also when he existed, so he was not necessarily evolved for a cold climate either. So it is interesting. It's almost like the Scrat would have been much more adapted for the underworld of dinosaurs as opposed to a certain weasel, considering Buck lived much later in time compared to Scrat in reality. Buck the weasel.
And would have Scrat killed Buck?
Okay. Well, if you put the two up against each other, Scrat does in reality have quite formidable teeth. But weasels are extremely tough. They're very well coordinated when it comes to just like specifically taking out species of prey items larger than themselves. So yeah, I'm going to give it to Buck. So, you know what? I'll take that back on that claim. But buck existed about 3.5 million years ago during the Pliocene epoch. So, around, at least when it comes to the first true weasels to evolve. So, he still would have been able to tame like different species of early proboscidean elephants or mammoths. And yeah, I guess if he could tame them, he could probably tame certain dinosaurs as well.
That's
Um,
funny.
So, anything else? The new discovery extends the known record of the dryolistoid mammals in South America back 60 million years from what was previously known. There were no acorns around at that time, though, so Chronopia like Scrat would have had to do without them. Um, yeah, that was actually also quite shocking. Like, it was it's just a huge leap back in time, but we've seen different, lineages of animals, like, I think it's happened with certain types of sharks, where they turned out to exist several tens of millions of years earlier compared to what was recently thought. Um, I guess there is a mammal or a couple we could bring up, Xenosmilus, a saber tooth. So, Xenosmilus.
Oh, this is interesting. Oh, it's small. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to find a bigger one. Oh,
I guess what does make sense about Scrat is that he's, kind of incoherent. So, him existing, like, back in the early late Cretaceous makes sense for the brain, structure, but no, he's still amazing.
this says from Ark.
That's no I mean, I don't
Oh,
all that animal being an arc. Could be. Okay, what is interesting is that they're giving this species a macarodont. So, more specifically, it is a member of Machaerodontidae, which is the same lineage of Felidae or saber-toothed cats that Smilodon belongs to as well, and even Homotherium. This is not the same lineage that animals like the Barbrophilids and Nimrovids or the Thylacosmilids, or specifically like Diego belongs to. Um, they belong to a different lineage of mammals, especially the Thylacosmilids. They're marsupials. But Xenosmilus is much more closely related to Smilodon, but has very short canines compared to Smilodon gracilis, Smilodon fatalis. It might be a little more on par with their earlier ancestor, the Macaridus from Eurasia.
run. I like this.
Um, let's see. Yeah, this is better. Also, when it comes to Xenosmilus, it has a wider, like a much more robust sort of canine compared to Smilodon. Like it didn't have to be as concerned about breaking its canines as much. And it's odd. Why did saber-toothed cats or Macarodonts like Xenosmilus evolve such robust canines compared to Smilodon? Smilodon really put a lot of emphasis into making, I think, just an overall very sharp sort of a long canine. Also, when it comes to Xenosmilus, in some cases, he can be shown as a bit more of like a, um, I guess maybe just a little more long-limbed compared to Smilodon, especially when you're looking at his hindquarters or at least the hind legs. They're a bit longer compared to his body size and when looking at Smilodon fatalis, for instance, which has some of the shortest hind limbs compared to its body size of any species of cat in general, which indicates that they're not really fast runners. That's also another thing. I think when people tend to think of the saber-toothed cats in general, really just thinking of those elongated canines, upper canines, and they tend to forget about the bottom canines also putting in a bit of work as well, especially when it came to Xenosmilus. It is also interesting that there's a huge gap in between the front incisor teeth and the canines, and then the back meat-cutting molars.
Is this one saying I'm sorry?
No, he's trying to cut off some meat with his side of his teeth.
Oh,
No, no, he doesn't feel bad for this thing. Um, No, he's quite satisfied with his pork. So, Platygonus. Okay, so this is like a earlier relative of a modern day javelina or a peccary from southern North America. Let's see. So it's also very likely that Xenosmilus would have preyed on certain other species of ground sloths within the region. Wonder if we have evidence of Xenosmilus hunting the pig in this instance. But different species of ground sloth existed at the time. Different species of mastodon and glyptodon. So the giant armored armadillos at this point, some of the largest, like even what's that specific animal? Not D. decurus. It's another species that could have probably weighed over 1,500 pounds or pushing a little over 700 kilograms. That younger one, Xenosmilus, might have consumed might have been a bit of a challenge since glyptodons tend to like inhabiting different marshes. So, Xenosmilus probably didn't necessarily have like a jaguar sort of a hunting strategy, but of a bit of a mystery. Um, let's see. Is there anybody else?
Are you asking me?
Um, technically, no. Okay, here we go. Scelidotherium. This is a much larger creature. He does not. Well, actually, it's very possible he might have eaten meat. Okay, Scelidotherium. And do feel free to ask any questions about prehistoric mammals or even the dinosaurs, proto mammals, and in the chat. Oh, wow. This is a very peculiar sort of a picture. Yeah, I'd say Scelidotherium has a very odd sort of a skull structure compared to a wide range of different species of ground sloths in general. There are also around over 5 different lineages of ground sloths. And no, this is not including the tree sloths, though they are very closely related to the ground sloths. So, largest tree sloth today maybe reaches around 20 pounds or pushing around 8 kilograms. The Scelidotherium could probably weigh somewhere around 1 to 2 tons, maybe slightly larger. And for the most part, was an herbivore, so feeding on different species of trees. Though, from evidence of different species of sloths, I think possibly over in South America as well, it's very possible it might have been somewhat omnivorous at certain points, so maybe even scavenging from certain animal carcasses. Um, I'm not sure if that's a youngster or that's a smaller species of ground sloth. There were certain species of ground sloths that were somewhere between 4 to 8 pounds, or a little over like maybe 2 to 3 kilograms. And I'm not sure if there's really any evidence of those animals specifically, like even climbing trees. They were just simply small ground dwelling sloths. They definitely had like a much more active sort of lifestyle compared to tree sloths, probably due to the fact that the vegetation that they're feeding on, especially the different species of leaves at this point in Ice Age or Pleistocene South America, were very enriched with different types of micro and macro nutrients
This guy needs a pedicure.
or elements. Um, oh, whoa, yeah, those are long. Look healthy though. Um, still seems like a bit of an older reconstruction, but yeah, it's that's a decent Scelidotherium. It is smaller than like the Lestodon over in South America, which in some cases likely coexisted with the Scelidotherium. Scelidotherium existed over in South America, especially over in certain areas of Brazil around 800,000 years ago. So it also likely came into contact with the Arctotherium or the giant short-faced bear within the region, and also different species of like the southern mastodons. Whoa, okay. So this is one of those reconstructions where they make the Giant ground sloths, also just due to the warm climate.
My god, like it's fat.
Okay, well, yeah, that too. But I meant just hairless. They probably had little scruffs of fur, but not too visible. Maybe like having like that small little tuft of fur, like at the um, bottom of its tail, or maybe like a light sort of a coating, what you see in different elephants or rhinos of today, and maybe even similar to what's usually like shown for Columbian mammoths. Okay, yeah, it's not hitting me that specific smaller ground sloth, so maybe he was arboreal somewhat. But yeah, just simply due to the mild climate or the warm climate, I should say. It's very possible they might have not had fur on certain species, but there are also, I mean, different species of animals today that live in quite warm climates, but it tends to drop sometimes. Um, that still have like a somewhat dense layer of fur, even for how hot it can become at certain points. So oh, okay, this is probably supposed to be Scelidotherium, possibly facing off a,
Smilodon.
yeah, probably a Smilodon, like a Smilodon. It could be a Smilodon fatalis or a populator, but, Xenosmilus, it's possible he might have come into contact with.
It doesn't say which one, it just says Smilodon.
Yeah, Scelidotherium. Well, looking at the overall, morphology of the animal, also the length of the canines, that's a Smilodon. Xenosmilus would have had much shorter canines. They're also going to be wider, but Scelidotherium, yeah, it's just funny. It's just sitting there and making itself look bigger. Probably would have worked in a lot of instances against most predators. Though Arctotherium could probably take it down. Let's see. So yeah, I'm assuming this animal is probably having to feed on also different species of fruit, very possibly at this point, and like similar to the mastodons in the area. And no, this specific species did not come into contact with the woolly mammoth, considering they're only yeah, that's pretty much the end. Considering the woolly mammoth is not going to range much further south than like certain areas of the Midwest or New England. So, thanks for joining. And from prehistoric to present, my name is Ethan. This is Creature Guy and Live Daily News. Happy International Scaledotherium there. Scaledotherium Day. And remember that nothing is better than all animals all the time.